All right, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Battle of the Bulge and how the war is going to come to an end in Europe. Past couple days we'll be talking about D-Day. So we'll talk about kind of where did the Americans go from there, where did the Allied forces go from there, and what happened to the Axis powers after D-Day. So you will be taking notes. You just watched a video on the Battle of the Bulge. We will get there more in detail on the slide as well. And I'll show you guys some maps and some other things as well. This won't last long, so just take the notes into your thing. In your notebooks, I'll tell you what you need, what you don't need. You will be doing an exit ticket after this. All right, so here we go. All right, so this is kind of where we're at, kind of showing you guys, again, kind of recapping a little bit. D-Day, here's Great Britain right here, where my cursor's at. You see all these forces that are converging down on France. Obviously, we were successful. Here's Normandy Beach right in through here. And obviously, we were successful in getting up the cliffs, overtaking the German obstacles. And then from there, we pushed through the beaches and start making our way into France. As you see by our forces here, we start getting into here. A few forces go west to the coast of Brest and Lorient. Some go down through here as well, onto this bottom coast as well. But most of the forces that we have are going to go out towards Paris. Obviously, the idea is to try and recapture Paris and to liberate Germany. And here's Germany over here. You can see it. So we want to start pushing the Germans back towards Germany and start reclaiming some of this lost land. All right, so this is kind of where we're at. So in terms of the end of the war, this is kind of what you guys need to put down into your notes. So as we start making our way inland into France after D-Day, the Allies are eventually going to get to Paris in August of 1944. Now think about when D-Day was. It was June 6th, 1944. So roughly about 2 months into the battle, we're going to make up all that ground, get into Paris, recapture it. And once we finish through Paris and we reclaim it, we still need to push the Germans back towards Germany. Which will result in one of the most famous battles of World War II, and arguably one of the most deadly battles of World War II, was the Battle of the Bulge. This was about a few months after the liberation of Paris in December. So, notice kind of what this battle is going to be. It's winter months. It's going to be cold, and the weather will play a factor, as you guys saw in the video. This is really, think of the Battle of the Bulge just as really the last major offensive that Germany has to have. It's their last gasp. They are getting pushed back. They lost Paris. They lost D-Day. Sorry about that. And Hitler wants to have one last hurrah, basically try and bust through the Allied line and try and get back towards Paris. So he puts basically the whole kit and caboodle in there as much as he can, try and basically just cause a wedge. So you see this picture down here, and even showed you in the video. So here was the front line before, and Germany they plow through this line. They create this big, huge bulge into the Allied line. Hence, that's why it's called the Battle of the Bulge. Now, this takes place in Belgium, and as you guys will see in the video that I shared with you, this was in the Ardennes forest. So it's very dense forest. And this is going to be a very difficult spot for a battle. As you can see in the video as well, American forces were outnumbered. So we had American forces right in through here in Bastogne. If you've ever seen Band of Brothers, there's a story about this on how the Germans have basically everybody surrounded. Eventually, George Patton, with his tank division, will race in and help save them. But for a while there, that U.S. division that was stuck or surrounded, for a while there, looked very bleak. It got to the point where the German officer yelled at the Americans, basically ordering them to surrender. And General McAuliffe, he had one single reaction to that. He goes, "Nuts!" So Americans were ordered not to surrender, keep Bastogne, hold the line, don't let them take that town. Now in this battle, you have over 81,000 casualties amongst the Americans, very, very brutal, over 100,000 Germans. Again, winter played a factor in it with the Germans going to experience low fuel. American positions in the Argonne Forest as well are going to play a factor as well. The Germans had a hard time delivering supplies to the fronts, and that'll be the end of the road for the German forces. Um, uh, so as they start reclaiming, sorry, I have Mr. Armstrong back here making faces at me. they're all making fun of me because of the snow day prediction. So anyway, so as after the Battle of the Bulge, they start getting in through rest of Belgium into France, and then the Russians from the east start pushing into Poland. That's where they start coming across many of the extermination camps like Auschwitz and Dachau, Sablador. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. I know last year in Global Issues, we spent some time talking about that, obviously with the Holocaust things, but there's a video that I'll show you guys here in a little bit once we all kind of wrap up, where the Allies will liberate the camps. All right, last but not least, Yalta Conference. This was in February of 45 after the Battle of the Bulge. This is at this point, Allied forces knew that it was a matter of when we were going to win, not if. They were pretty confident that Germany didn't have the resources that were needed. The Nazis were on the run. Even many of Hitler's soldiers began to even turn on him in his closer inner circle. So at that point, the Allies knew that the war was basically over. So they met at this place called Yalta. This is the location where the Allies are going to meet to discuss the terms of the treaty. Again, the big four are going to meet. I'll talk about that later on. Shortly after this meeting at the Yalta Conference, FDR is going to pass away in April of 45. So about 2 months after that. So Vice President Harry Truman is now president. So keep that in mind. It's important in terms of wrapping up the end of the war. At this point, by April, Allied forces retook most of the lost lands. They just have to, it's basically just a race to Berlin. So you have the Russians coming from the east and the US and the British coming from the west, and they're trying to converge to try and get to Berlin first, which leads into VE Day. VE Day was May 7th, 1945, and that's when the Germans will officially surrender. Adolf Hitler, he will be in his bunker in Berlin, and that's where he will commit suicide with him and his wife, Eva Braun. And they sign the treaty, and they surrender. Now, the war's not over yet, just the war in Europe. The war in the Pacific is still ongoing. So we'll focus more of our attention on that later on. So we'll focus more on Yalta later on. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on that right now, but just understand, just for the exit ticket here, that Yalta is where the Allied forces are going to meet.